The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, and across the moat from Oakland. And if I don't sound too enthusiastic this morning, not that I don't have Jerry Feitelberg here to soften the blow. Oakland, baseball, humanity, we've all lost Vida Blue. And it was on Twitter that he had passed away. Jerry tells me he was 73, and that's very young to a 76-year-old. And Jerry, I forget how old you are, but anytime an icon passes away, it doesn't really matter. It's too young. Let's put it that way. And
you're absolutely right, Ralph. Today is a very, very sad day. Vida Blue was very, very instrumental to the A's in the early 70s when they went on. He came up as a rookie in 1971, and he had a phenomenal year. And he was very instrumental in the A's winning 3 American League pennants and 3 World Championships in 72, 73, and 74. And it is sad when one of the players in the Oakland A's Hall of Fame, one of the best players ever in Oakland, leaves us.
Yeah, and he stood up to Charlie Finley. He was a real man at an early age. Finley messed with him after his terrific rookie year, and he was courageous, because it was a time when you didn't stand up to ownership. There was no such thing as free agency, and an owner could bury a player for life.
Absolutely.
Proverbially.
Yeah, absolutely. My brother's father-in-law was a shortstop in the Detroit Tiger system. He played AAA ball, and they buried him. He never got the call up to the major leagues, and he was a good ball player. But for whatever reason, he couldn't say, okay, I'm going to go to free agency and I'll sign on with someone who's looking for a shortstop. They just buried him, and that's going back. Of course, that's going back when the reserve clause was in existence, but that doesn't exist anymore. But that's what they could do. And Finley tried to do that. Blue had that great year in 1971. He won 24-8, and he was an MVP one year too. I don't know if that was the year, but the following year he only appeared in 25 games. Because there was a contract dispute, and Finley did not want to pay him. And Blue sat out, and he went to work, I think he was working for a hardware store or a hardware supply place. And, they finally got it resolved. But that's exactly what you said. An owner could bury a player, and they could put the screws to a player knowing that they had the reserve clause, that they couldn't go anywhere else.
Right. We talk about the good old days. The good old days weren't necessarily carefree in many ways, especially labor relations, not just in baseball, in life. It's amazing. and you can tell stories. What comes to your mind when I say labor relations?
Well, there's always been a struggle between labor and management, and this goes way back, and it goes way back well over a century, maybe 150 years ago, when labor unions in the industrial area, and people were working in very unsafe conditions. They were working long hours. There was no overtime pay. There were no child labor relation laws. They had child labor, kids working for next to nothing to get the products out. But with the establishment of the labor unions, they could negotiate, they could bargain, and their weapon was a strike. And if they couldn't, get a decent contract, they would go on a strike to get benefits, improved benefits, and we got the 40-hour work week from that. We have child labor laws, so better working conditions, safer conditions, less industrial accidents. Now, in baseball.
Well, let me just ask you one thing: has the pendulum turned with the unions?
Yeah, it may have. At one point, management had the upper hand, but labor got so many great advances. They kept asking for too much, and as a result, a lot of companies became non-competitive, and that was a factor. But union membership in America, maybe back in the 50s and 60s, maybe 35 or 40% of the workers were unionized. And I think it's down to about 8% now because companies became enlightened and gave the workers benefits comparable to what the unions were asking for. And so there was no need for these companies to unionize. But
you say enlightened and I say paid the ransom.
Okay.
It's all semantics.
Sure.
No company boss, manager does anything for labor without having to. And it's almost divided us as much as the political thing has divided us.
Yeah. Well, it's if they have contracts, and a contract within the four corners of the contract spells out exactly what has to be done. And if it's not in the contract, management doesn't have to do it. And if it's not in the contract, labor doesn't have to do it. So these are things, and those are the things that get negotiated over time. And sometimes the negotiations get to go down to the last wire, to the last minute, and they'll have a settlement just before the strike. And sometimes you do have a strike. Airlines have gone on strike. The teachers have gone on strike.
In Oakland right now, there's a strike going on between teachers and kids most in need of education. In poor districts, Oakland is floundering, and they can't get it together. Management and labor can't get it together to keep those kids learning every day, just to take advantage of what we now know is that a better life starts with education. And
yes, but at the same time, Ralph, the teachers have to make enough money to be able to afford to live in the Bay Area. And right now that's not happening. The teachers are not making enough money. They cannot afford to buy homes in the Bay Area.
No question. But these problems need to be mitigated out of school, so to speak. Because it's like the firemen can't go on strike because it's important that your house doesn't burn down. Well,
exactly.
It's equally important that your kid doesn't turn into a moron. There should be some unions that can't strike. That's all. not to say negotiations and compromise shouldn't take place, but not at the cost of your proverbial house burning down. And that's my rant.
I remember my father worked for a newspaper. My father was a union man. He belonged to the Pressmen's Union. And for years and years and years, they never had a strike. And they went out on strike, I think, maybe 1956 or 1957, somewhere in there. And I don't remember how long the strike would go. But the thing is, the other unions wouldn't cross the picket lines. And so if the press were on strike, they wouldn't cross, so the newspaper shut down. So I back in those days, TV news wasn't what it is today. And so there were no newspapers, and that affected a lot of people. It affected us, because my father's income stopped coming in at that time. But as I recall, I don't think they were out very long. But let's say another union, like the typesetter union, went on strike. Then they couldn't cross the picket line, and they were out of money too. And the union people wanted to show solidarity, so they wouldn't cross the picket lines. And if they did, they were called scabs, which was a very
uncomplimentary. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. Getting back to baseball and to Vida Blue. Blue was faced with that situation. There was no baseball union. He was on his own, and if he didn't sign the contract, he couldn't practice his profession, and he didn't get paid. And that's why he went to work for someone. And eventually, Finley came to his senses, and they worked something out. But it just shows you, and of course, then you had Marvin Miller create the player union, and a couple of years later, they got free agency when Dave McNally and Andy Messersmith became the first players to be granted free agency. And now baseball, free agency in baseball, I know the owners hate it, and they're paying the guys a lot of money, but look at the money they're making. They're making a lot of money. They're all making money.
Right. The books have been opened up, and you say a lot of money, an incredible amount of money. So both sides have conspired not to make the game better. Let's just put it there. I don't think the rule changes necessarily, all of them, and some of them do. The 10-second pitch count is terrific. On the other hand, the phantom runner is nauseating in extra innings. So
I'm not crazy. Most everybody I talk to hates the ghost runner, but the bigger bases, there's more base stealing. The pitch clock is great. The game I went to on Thursday was 2 hours and 39 minutes. A very crisp game. The elimination of the shifts, hits are going up the middle. The shortstop and second baseman, they have to place the fielders, and that's a little bit of strategy rather than using the shift. And then they have the second baseman, shortstop. They have to show their athleticism, keeping the ball from going up the middle. But it's really made it good. That's what baseball used to be. Play a game in 2.5 hours with hitting, running. The hit and run is back in baseball, assuming that the players can get the bat on the ball, and it's easier to do as a writer, and especially the writers love it. Especially the writers love the ghost runner, especially on a night game. If it's going 3 hours or 3.5 hours, they want the runs to score in the 10th or 11th inning so we all can go home.
Yes, I appreciate that too. But, some of fans' fondest memories are as a result of extended extra inning games. I remember the Mets played the Phillies in 1964. 24 innings or 26 innings. People talk about it. Remember the song, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game, I Don't Care If I Never Get Back"? Well, extra innings are a rarity in themselves, and extended extra innings shouldn't have been messed with. But that's a union thing. The players don't want to, play extra inning games.
Well, the longest game that I remember was a 19-inning game between the A's and the Angels. I think it was 2011 or 2012. The game went 6 hours and 23 minutes. It was over at around 20 minutes to 2, something like that. Back in the old days, they would call the games at midnight, remember, and then they would finish it the next day if the two teams were playing the next day, or they would wait until later.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they would call the game, and then later, and if the teams weren't meeting the next day, they would restart the game the next time they came up. So there would be a game in limbo until they could resolve the issue. So those are gone. The umpires don't call games anymore. And so I got home around 2:00 that night, and I don't remember. I don't think we had a day game the next day, but if we did, it would be very tiring. And the other one, was the second one, was the A's played a 19-inning game against the Yankees, but that was a day game, so that wasn't so bad.
Jerry, I'm going to segue into some politics. We have a lot going on with former President Trump, a lot of trials. What do you see his biggest fear? What's going to get him?
I think anyone's biggest fear is going to jail. What's going to get him is the truth coming out and all the stuff that went on with January 6th, because that was dereliction of duty. It was obstruction of justice. It looks like there was seditious conspiracy. So those are and so many other violations. I'm sure that more than I can reel off, the prosecutors would know. And he also has the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, has announced that somewhere between July 11th and September 1st, the charges will
take it to the grand jury. Forward.
Yeah, well, she's going to take it to the grand jury and present it, and the grand jury then will recommend the indictments at that time. Right now, as you know, that there were 16 fake electors in Georgia. 8 of them have been granted immunity, and they're all telling the truth now to the grand jury, to the district attorney in Fulton County, and that evidence will be presented to the grand jury also. So, no one wants to go to jail, but what they did.
I have hopes that he does. Are they realistic? Do you think? And we haven't even mentioned the January 6th charges and those people being convicted, the Proud Boys. So it's coming down on him. He's been the Teflon guy all his life.
Yes.
Is it going to be that way again?
John Gotti was the Teflon Don too, and Mark Pomerantz was one of the prosecutors to put him in jail. And of course, Pomerantz is going to testify to the House Judiciary Committee on May 12th behind closed doors. But and I read Pomerantz's book. Pomerantz felt that they had more than enough evidence to indict him, and Alvin Bragg, who replaced Cy Vance as the DA in New York, in the city and county of New York, decided that he felt that there weren't sufficient evidence to get charges. So now, and then of course later, a year later, they had more evidence, so then they charged him. So yeah, Trump has got he's got a very, very expensive legal bill, and he has people coming after him, and someone's gonna get him. He's going to be found guilty of something. I hope he is.
Yes, yes. And now, will he be found guilty help his campaign or hinder his campaign? Will it bring his crazies together and who are easily convinced of stuff and convince them that he's been done wrong and it might help him?
Yeah, well, the crazies better be paying attention what's going on with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, because those guys are going to jail. And if people want to riot and they want to do violence and harm people, they're going to go to jail too. So, you know what they did in 2020, trying to overturn a fair and free election, is unconscionable. They wanted to establish, put a guy in that didn't win the election, who lost by 7 million votes on phony baloney charges that never existed. They were all made up, and they sold to these gullible people who just did. I just can't believe that anyone who would look at this rationally could not see all the bad things that were done in Trump's name, trying to keep this idiot and this guy who does not deserve to get even anywhere near the Oval Office for the rest of his life.
Well, I wrote a meme a while back. One isn't a schmuck because they think the election was stolen. They think the election was stolen because they're a schmuck. So that's the way I see it. And Jerry, we went over it all today. You helped me get through it, and I'm appreciative. Thanks for a terrific podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you. You're welcome. You know, it is a sad day when you lose a player like Vida Blue, who really meant so much to the Oakland franchise, and it's a shame that the current owner and management of the A's wants to take the team to Las Vegas. You know, you go back and you look at the success that the A's had after Finley left. The Walter Haas family had it, and they got brought in Tony La Russa as the manager. They had rookies of the year 3 years in a row. Canseco, McGuire, Walt Weiss. They won 3 pennants, 1 world championship. Their last world championship was 1989 under Walter Haas. Since that time,
and wait a second, Jerry. They had the best pharmacist in Major League Baseball history.
Oh, thank you. Well, unfortunately, I was there not in the boom years. I was in the bust years from 93 for 6 years, from 93 to 98. But, you know, baseball, like sports, is cyclical.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, be good, my friend. Thank you again.
Okay. Pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
Love your company. And thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Jerry Feitelberg is the guest, and I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Adios.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.